on a do-over redistricting scheme that Tom DeLay and a bunch of people had going in the state of Texas. That is how they found them. They found those people by using the Patriot Act to access their credit card information to see where they were spending money.
Right.
Now, if you want to call all of those people in the Texas state legislature terrorists or foreigners or Middle Easterners, and you know that's up to you, but I think that's a very big and obviously politically motivated example of abuse.
Various Justice Department officials have, quote, I'm quoting from the Justice Department here, said things like, U.S. citizens cannot be investigated under this act, unquote. Quote, one fact is the FBI can't get your records. Quote, it is not directed at U.S. persons. Quote, if you have read the act, that is absolutely not true. It can't be for U.S. citizens. Well, I've read parts of the act, okay? And if you want to take a look for yourself, you can read it here on Section 215, well, A.
215.
You're not going to see this.
Yeah, here, look on the screen.
Section 215A of the Patriot Act says, authorizes the investigation of a United States person, which the statute defines to include both citizens and permanent residents, okay? Now, that's part of the lie machine coming out of there about what they can do, and that they can't actually use it to investigate United States citizens for United States business. There is a lie that the FBI just can't investigate someone on a whim, but they must convince a judge about, quote, back to the probable cause thing, you know, he's a terrorist or a foreign spy or something. Well, an FBI spokeswoman says, quote, I think there's some hysteria out there. We still have to show probable cause. Another Justice Department spokesman says the standard of proof before the court is the same it's always been. It hasn't been lessened. But actually,
well, you know, if we're dealing with terrorists here, why is there Section 225, which offers immunity for compliance with FISA wiretaps? Why are they allowing this kind of plea bargaining style arrangement to be going on if they're supposedly only dealing with terrorists?
Well,
it's obvious that there's more going on than
far from the probable cause thing. You've got in Section 215, which, like you said, with the FISA court, that allows simply by telling this court that these people are involved with terrorism, the judge, Section 215 says the judge shall enter, okay, an order approving the investigation. Not the judge will review it or anything. If they say this is what it's for, the judge has to do it. You got it, you go for it. And there's nothing to base that on but the agency's unproven claim that the records are, quote, relevant. But who's to decide if it was relevant? So the power has shifted from the judicial oversight to now the agency of, quote, law enforcement. So anyway, we have a call from John on line 1. John? Dave, line 2. Excuse me, Jeffrey, I'm sorry, line 3.
Hey, yeah, you know, as a black male, I feel that the Patriot Act is really, like, taken away from my rights. Because, you know, I've been searched a few times, and, you know, there's the cops that come up and are like, yo, man, it's because of the Patriot Act.
In what way? Can you say that again?
Like...
Whoops. Lost him, too.
Lost him, too.
Oh, well. Anyway, well, the power that's being shifted from the agency, you know, from the law to the law enforcement, you know, they're saying that you shouldn't worry. I mean, the government's trying to tell you, hey, don't fret. It's okay. You know, you can trust us. They literally say you can trust us. Justice Department official, quote, said not too long ago, we go to great lengths to protect the privacy of every American. If you're not a terrorist or a spy, you have nothing to worry about, which was something Bob had brought up earlier. Well, you know, if we could simply trust the authorities to do what was right and didn't have to worry about it, there'd be no need for the Bill of Rights in the first place. The reason we have those is because we know within the process of checks and balances that you have to have offsetting abilities for the government and the people to know what the government is doing, and that you can't be spied upon by your own government, by our own sort of domestic Stasi, in order to investigate what people are doing. The history of the FBI is not really overly inspiring when it comes to the ability of Americans to trust them to, quote, like the Justice Department said, protect the privacy of every American. You know, there's firm legal restrictions on police power, which are what is used to enforce our constitutional rights. You know, it's not blind faith in the good intentions of our government. It's not what the Constitution is based on.
No, if that were the case, why would we wouldn't need the Bill of Rights at all if we could afford to blithely trust anyone who was who gained a position in the government to act on our behalf and not to abuse their power. Why would we need the Bill of Rights? You know, James Madison was the guy who recognized the potential for this abuse and wanted us to have the Bill of Rights, even though Jefferson said that the Bill of Rights was might not be necessary because every right that wasn't specifically enumerated should be assumed to be had by the people.
Yes. And I think, Jeffrey, do we have you back on the line there?
Yeah, so anyway, like I was saying, you know, like as a black male, I know what it's like to be searched out, you know, just because like of my race and whatnot. You know what I mean? Just because like people will pull you over in the car just because you're black. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
But anyways, like,
I don't know what you mean by that.
Patriot Act is like I kind of feel like, and some other people I talk to, like it's targeting people the Islamic, you know, the Islamic faith and whatnot. And I just want to know what you think would be probable cause for someone to get like their car searched or whatnot, or the wiretaps that had to be patted down and whatnot. I really feel that it's like people like Middle Eastern, you know?
Well, they're what they call racial profiling.
Yeah, I really feel like this Patriot Act is really racial profiling, and I feel that George Bush has brought a predominantly racist attitude to the White House and to the government itself.
Well, I certainly think, you know, that the philosophy behind the Patriot Act is not incompatible with the philosophy behind racial profiling, but I think this is you know, even a much larger and more fundamentally dangerous thing than just picking on one group of people. As bad as that is, this goes further than that, and it certainly accelerates the potential for that as well.
Absolutely. Jeffrey, thank you for your call. We appreciate that.
Yeah, well, I mean, what exactly do you think will be probable cause, you know?
Well, that's a good question. For probable cause, for, you know, it's a law enforcement question.
Well, if you're a Democratic state legislator in Texas, which means you probably represent a minority district in Texas, because that's where that's who most of the Democrats represent in Texas, then that's probable cause for them to invoke the Patriot Act to find out where you're spending your money, so they could come and haul you back to Austin to get a quorum.
Well, I'll tell you what I don't think is probable cause, okay, which is like what happened on May the 30th. When you talk about probable cause or what gives the government these rights, you got to remember that that faith that the government's going to do the right thing. Well, that got questioned on May the 30th, 2002, a couple of years ago. Ashcroft passed another one of his edicts, which basically gave the FBI governing powers or surveillance over law-abiding U.S. citizens in ways that became totally unchecked. Well, of course, you can say, again, they have these checks, but they don't. They don't have the checks that we've ever seen before, where they can use, now the FBI can now investigate and infiltrate organizations based on all sorts of things. And what are they based on? What you asked Jeffrey about what is probable cause? Well, now we don't really know, or what is the probable cause? They say, well, we think it's because they might be affiliated with terrorism, but how do they define that? Now you've got people being investigated because of political statements, because of their religious affiliations, because of, you know, you've got the race thing, like Ed said,
most definitely.
This goes beyond race, but you have it where you have Arab Americans being tracked down because they might have a connection. You know, and there's reasons for that, of course, you know, in the sense of you know, Muslim terrorists.
Stereotyping.
But it becomes stereotyping. But now it's crossed over the lines where you have Texas legislators tracked down, you have political groups that oppose Bush foreign policy being infiltrated, and this goes back to some scary and ugly things. Because now what you're doing is...
This is not the first time that this kind of thing has gone on. It's just that it now has this protective blanket over it called the Patriot Act.
Yes, and you've got things like Cointelpro, or there's a Cointelpro, I'm sorry, which was like the FBI. Are you familiar with what that was, Jeffrey? Back in,
I think so. I think I saw it on CNN.
Yeah,
you might have.
Very likely.
Back in the 60s especially, the 50s and 60s, the FBI had a covert intelligence operation where they would use law enforcement to infiltrate groups, churches,
Civil rights groups, anti-war groups were infiltrated
Most
campuses.
definitely, you know, I heard about that, the Malcolm X.
Yes.
Oh,
and
absolutely.
There was, like,
Martin Luther
a
King.
conspiracy.
Malcolm X, Martin
Yeah,
Luther King,